It's summertime. The birds are chirping, there's a cool breeze coming through my windows as we speak, and the temperature is finally tolerable. But instead of going outside and enjoying the good weather for what it is and enjoying this good season, I decided to kind of impromptu record a Let's Play of a classic JRPG. As you could probably tell by the title, it's none other than... Title, please come on screen. Dragon Quest, yay! God, I love this game. This is a classic. You know, genres are a fickle and complicated thing, and you can't ever really point to one game and be like, that's the one, you know, that's the game that started everything. But if you had to pick one for RPGs, this is kind of arguably it in terms of getting the ball rolling and really being a pop culture classic. You know, this game really is one of the most influential games in the genre. And I think it's one that a lot of Western people are maybe familiar with, but haven't really played for themselves, which, you know, that's obviously in my wheelhouse for games I like to play for my channel. So let's go through and do this. We are Aleph, which is the closest thing that this character has to a canonical name. Some of you may be laughing because that is also the name of the protagonist from Shin Megami Tensei 2, a game that many of you want me to play for this channel, I know. It'll happen one day, I promise. And I think it's supposed to be a reference to the same thing, even though they're both spelled differently. I think it's, you know, it's a reference to the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, I believe. Might be another, I'm pretty sure it's the Hebrew alphabet. I don't, you know, fact check me on that, but... yeah, we are the descendant of a hero named Erdrick, and we have to go defeat the Dragon Lord who has stolen the Sphere of Light. I think in some translations also called the Orb of Light. There's a lot of differing translations for these early Dragon Quest games. In Japan and in the Game Boy translation, instead of Erdrick, the legendary hero that we're descended from is known as Loto. And I think even some games might say Roto, just because, you know, it's the Japanese translation thing with the L and R, not always, you know, being easy to decipher which one was intended. So yeah, we're starting out here with nothing but a bamboo sphere, a magic key that we're about to lose, and a torch that we can use to actually see when we explore dark caves and such. Nah, we don't need to know about her. Fuck it. I already know about her, you know, we don't need the backstory. I actually intended to go back to that guy and ask after I chose that answer as a joke, and then I actually never did, so we're just never gonna find out about the story. But I mean, you get the idea. The princess was kidnapped by the evil man named the Dragon Lord. There's really not much else to explain there. Yeah, we talked to the guards, and, you know, this, as you've probably already seen from the translation, Dragon Quest games, especially starting from the DS games onward, really like to do this ye olde English style type of translation just for flavor. Some people can't stand it, and I understand that, but I personally don't mind it too much. Though sometimes, I will admit, sometimes I have to reread text boxes and just be like, what was this actually trying to say? And also one thing I do want to apologize for, and I'm sure maybe you've already noticed it, but I think there are some scenes that are unfortunately worse. Looking back at the footage for this Let's Play, you know, I have all the parts edited, I just need to talk over them. I advanced through some of these text boxes a little too fast for my liking. Normally I kind of like to keep things slow, just for the sake of convenience, and so you can read along. But I don't know what I was doing, but some of these conversations, I was going at max speed on the A button, and just kind of reading along as it scrolled, and I read fast as is, so when I usually play RPGs just for myself, and I'm not recording them, I tend to really speed through text boxes. I've played RPGs with friends watching, and they're like, how the fuck are you reading this so fast? I'm like, I don't know, I just read fast. So yeah, I do want to apologize if there are a few scenes that you have to be a little fast on the pause button when you're watching this Let's Play, or maybe have to scrub through the timeline just to see what was said. That's really on me. And I know if I was watching, I'd probably be a little annoyed by that. But otherwise, I think I did a pretty good job on this playthrough, and there are so few conversations in this game in the grand scheme of all the footage that I didn't want to go through and re-record an entire playthrough just to fix that problem. I hope you understand, aren't too upset about it. But otherwise, I think I'm really happy with how this playthrough turned out. So yeah, we're just going through Castle Tantagil, or Tantagal or Tantagil, you can never tell with the G's. And we're also in a world called Alifgard, which it's also very funny, and I don't know how intentional this was when they chose the protagonist's name and whatever side material that they call him Aleph in, but actually I'm probably going to say Aleph, just because I'm pretty sure, again, it's supposed to be a reference to that letter, but I'm pretty sure you're supposed to say Alifgard when referring to the world, but Aleph when referring to the hero, so I don't know, it's weird, but it's very funny to me that our main character, it sounds like the world is named after him, but it's probably the opposite in some way too, you know. They're like, oh yeah, Aleph, Alifgard, let's see. Now that I say that, I'm probably going to just switch pronouncing between Aleph and Aleph, but Aleph is usually how I say it when I'm not thinking about the fact that the world we're in is also named Alifgard. That guy's just vibing in the corner over there. And I believe I referenced this earlier, but yeah, when we're exploring dark places, we actually need a torch to light our way, which is something that kind of is a holdover from the tabletop RPG days that I feel RPGs in general just kind of do not want to deal with anymore. Like, I think, obviously, you have those dark caves in Pokemon that you need Flash to see in, but this actually has, like, a actual, like, sphere of vision that you can see around that you actually need a torch to see through, which is a pretty cool mechanic that I know probably frustrates more people than, you know, people like me who actually like it and want it in games like this, but it's another layer of complexity to dungeons that I think is a little interesting to deal with. That right there is the final area of the game. We can see it right across the neighborhood. Just big, evil, poisonous castle in a swamp on top of a mountain. We cannot get to there yet, even if we wanted to. We have to go through the main quest of this game, which is admittedly fairly light, and this is actually a very simple game in the grand scheme of, you know, looking at how JRPGs are structured. And honestly, this is a very freeform game, too. And yeah, this guy's given us a tutorial on damage tiles. That's actually something that's nice to do when you first start this game, is just talk to all the townspeople in the castle and in the nearby village here, which I don't remember the name of this this town. I'm sure that guy over at the gate there just told us that, and I'm just forgetting it. The soldier guys really wanted to see our diploma. And unfortunately, we don't have anything to... So that's my question. If we don't have anything to prove that we're descended from the legendary hero, how did the king seek us out and be like, hey, go, you know, your grandpa was someone important, go do this for us? There we go. We got our first party member, villager girl. She's actually not gonna stick around, but she follows us for a bit, which is fun. And before you go out on an adventure, it's always a good idea to find the local item town and stock up on some, you know, medicinal herbs and maybe a few other things. There's honestly not a lot of item variety in this game. There's only one healing item. It basically is the equivalent of casting the first level heal spell on yourself, and you can hold up to 6 of them. And then there are keys, which we're gonna get later on in the game. We got one just to open that door at the start, but we're not gonna get others for a while. Though you do want to pick up this dragon scale. This is the only... Well, okay, there's actually 2 accessories in the game. This is the only one that actually does anything. So you can actually go into your inventory here and just equip this, and it gives a minor boost to your defense. It's not much, but also you're not losing anything by not getting it, so it's just like a little bonus stat boost that you can get early on here. You can just keep it on for the rest of the game, and it'll give you a additional, like, +2 defense, I think it is. Excuse me, a little burpee. We're gonna go big on the defense when we're buying our new equipment here, so I'm gonna use most of my money just to get this leather shield. And on top of that, with the dragon scale, we're gonna be not especially tanky, but we're gonna be able to take a few more hits than we probably would otherwise. Then we're gonna save up for that leather suit so that we have even more defense, but then also at some point too, we are gonna want to have a weapon. And actually too, I'm just now realizing that I do not have the bamboo sphere equipped yet, and I don't know if I, oh yeah, that's just showing me the difference in stats without it equipped. I think I might forget to equip this bamboo sphere for a little bit. We're gonna have to watch the footage and make fun of me and see. This is a very important tip. You always want to make sure when you're crossing a bridge you are prepared to get your ass kicked a little bit. Though the first set of bridges that we are going to see on the east and west part of the world map, and I'll explain the world map layout in a bit because it's kind of an important part of this game, don't really ratchet up the difficulty too much, but so you kind of get into a false sense of security. It's a little funny. Like, you cross the first set of bridges and you're like, I mean, I guess the enemies are a little tougher, but not really. And then you get to that second stage of bridge crossing, and you're like, oh fuck, okay, no, that guy was right. These monsters are a problem. There are a few items in the game that can curse us, and there's a few NPCs like that guy that can help you out. I never got cursed this playthrough because I didn't get those items that would do that effect on you. So let's walk around the overworld map here for a little bit of a random encounter. We're going to fight a Draki here. These Toriyama designs are just fantastic. For those of you who don't know, the artist who did Dragon Ball, Akira Toriyama, is also the artist for all of like the monster and character designs and stuff for the Dragon Quest series. And they just have a really feel-good, light-hearted look to them that I really, really love. Yeah, just a little goofy bat guy. Whereas Final Fantasy, I think, always tried to be more akin, obviously stylized so that it was unique, but more akin to something that came out of the Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual. In some cases, they literally came out of the Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual. You know, Dragon Quest monsters always look like they're Saturday morning cartoon villains in a way that I find very endearing and fun. They're just cute. And yeah, as you can see, I realized I needed to equip the spear there, so I went and did it. And then also something, too, that you can see when these battle screens pull up, obviously they're in the first person. Depending on what tile we get the encounter on, the background will change, which is kind of a neat touch, too. The version that we're playing, admittedly, if this is your first time seeing the game, you might think this looks pretty clean and stuff like that, but this is actually the Switch version of the game, which is just the most accessible version of it, and also it's just easy to throw on my Switch and, you know, plug it in my capture card and record this instead of dealing with the other version of the game, which I generally prefer, which is the SNES fan translation. Unfortunately, it does have some rough spots, and it's just less polished, but overall, I do think the SNES version of this game looks better. It just looks more uniform. They touched up some different parts of this game, as Square Enix likes to do for a lot of their pixel art based re-releases. So this UI looks really clean, and I think it looks fine, but also there's something about the fact that they replaced the sprite art for the enemies with like what is basically their concept art that just makes everything, it just kind of breaks my brain a little bit, and like it doesn't look terrible, I guess, but everything just looks a little off. At the same time, they redid the main character sprite here. And I think actually all the character sprites, so that they're a little taller. They were a little more deformed and kind of chibi looking in the Super Nintendo version. And actually, I should say Super Famicom, because that re-release actually was exclusive to Japan, and the only way to play it in English is by getting an English translation. But yeah, that original version just has a more uniform look that I genuinely like a little bit more than the touched up version that in some ways I think kind of has a few different clashing elements to it that just, I don't know, sometimes when Square Enix re-releases their pixel art games, and I don't mean this to dunk on RPG Maker games, but it reminds me of kind of how RPG Maker games look in a way that, I shouldn't say that because that's unfair, but, you know, RPG Maker games that don't have, you know, a a skilled design sensibility around them. It feels like a clashing of different styles, and you can kind of see where the moving elements and the tiles are kind of clashing in a way. But, there's a lot of wonderful games made in RPG Maker with fantastic art direction. So, that was me being unfair when I said looks like an RPG Maker game. I didn't mean any disrespect there. But yeah, it just doesn't have the uniform look I usually look for in games like this. So then going to the south here, you can see that there's more land to the continent there. There's also a cave we can explore, but we gotta go over the long way to be able to get over there. I'm also not cutting out these random encounters here for a bit, just because I wanted to give y'all a sense of what actually playing this game is like with the encounter rate. People who watch my Let's Plays often like them because I get pretty liberal with just cutting out superfluous random encounters as they go along. That will happen even towards the end of this episode. I say looking at my video editor timeline, but yeah, just for now, I wanted to give you all a sense of what it actually feels like to play Dragon Quest and explore this overworld map. Similarly, I do want to say that I'm going to include in some walking that I think people maybe would be wondering, like, oh, why did you leave that in and not just cut out? But something that I think is very important to this game is traversing the world map, and I wanted to make sure that I give people viewing this a sense of direction and location, and really give you a feel of what it's like to be walking from place to place. So some overworld map trips I will cut out, some of them I won't. Here's what the desert tile looks like. See, like, that desert background looks really nice, but it looks too clean for me compared to the rest of the assets, like, in the background that you can see that are obviously, like, 16-bit era. It's just weird to me. Also, fun fact, too, I don't know if any of you have messed around with RPG Maker 2003, I think the year was on that, but the default tile set in that was very clearly taken from the 16-bit versions of Dragon Quest. There's a very heavy influence there, so if you're thinking this might look familiar, you may have played an RPG Maker 2003 game that just used the default assets, and it's pretty similar to what you're seeing here. There's a poisonous swamp over there, and I don't really feel like taking the damage because we're still squishy, so I'm not gonna bother with it so far. But yeah, to explain the overworld map a little bit, because like I said, I feel like its design is very intentional and adds a lot of fun and exploration to this game that I think a lot of people are kind of taken aback by when they actually go here and go back to this game and play it for themselves. The game is kind of split into 6 well, I guess it's not really a quad. Is sextant a word? Like 6 sections? Whatever. The game is split up into 6 different parts on the world map. We kind of start in the northernmost middle section, and we want to get to the bottommost middle section, which is where the Dragon Lord's castle is. But to get there, we need to explore the western and eastern parts of the map, and we got our first level up. It plays the little horn theme when you do that, so that's nice. Oh, this actually isn't my first level up. I must have missed my other one earlier while I was babbling on. There's a lot to cover about this game. I'm sorry. But yeah, we're gonna be going alternating from the west part of the map and the eastern part of the map, getting things done. Most of which are actually optional. There are technically, if you wanted to, you can just grind up a lot in this game and not do a lot of the possible activities and dungeons and stuff, and just kind of beeline it towards the end. It's a very interesting game that is very open-ended. That I think a lot of people just assume a game like this is, very linear, if you're familiar with other RPGs that came after this one, and very story-focused, but no, there's a lot of finding out stuff and listening for rumors from town NPCs, and then using that to go back to places you've explored or find other places to look into, and just doing cool stuff to make the adventure more interesting and getting stuff to help you on your goal to actually defeating the Dragon Lord. But if you really wanted to, you can just grind it out and then do, like, I think there's only 3 or 4 things you really need to do, like, in terms of getting items, and then you can go over to the Dragon Lord's castle and just beat the game. But I'm going to be doing pretty much everything this game has to offer. I think actually everything this game has to offer. You might as well. it's a lot more interesting than just grinding your way there, in my opinion. And, yeah, it's just fun overall. So before we go down south there, we're on the westernmost part of the map. We're going to go visit this town here, second town in the game. You're going to hear this guy rock out a tune. I think you need a little practice on that, bud. Maybe someday. This is Galin Home. It's named after a famous bard, also named Galin. There's Alefgard, there's Galin Home. Every single time you point to a town in this game, there's probably some asshole that's named after the same thing. Like, Tantagle Castle is probably named after a dude named, like, Tant or something. Please don't name your child Tant. That is a bad name. Though, honestly, I'd probably take it over whatever the fuck Elon Musk named his child recently. Jesus Christ. I'm not going to talk about Elon Musk this playthrough. I'm going to love myself and not talk about Elon Musk. See, like, this is the type of stuff you want to be on the lookout for. This guy espied the culprits of the princess's kidnapping. Alright, good to know. So yeah, we are going to basically grind up a little bit and alternate between going west and east. There's actually, we're gonna, as you make your way down south, because basically as you could kind of see from where we started on the world map, we're a little bit locked and we can only really go north, and then when we go north from our starting location, you have the choice to go either to the west or to the east. And there is a cave a little bit to the south of here that we're going to explore and use to level up and just gain some experience points and gold so that we can then explore the east. And then we're just going to be going back and forth, slowly making our way down south more and crossing more bridges and facing tougher enemies. Until we eventually get everything that we need so that we can get to the final area. This is, I think, yeah, this is where I start to cut out the random encounters, because y'all don't need to see me fight a million she-slimes as I walk on over here. I actually don't know. I must have forgot something. Maybe oh, no. I don't know what I'm doing here, actually. Maybe I needed some gold to do something. I think that might have been it. Or maybe I just forgot to rest at the inn. What's going on here? Oh, yeah, I wanted to grind up so that I could afford the leather suit and get an additional 4 points of defense. Notice the European spelling on that, too. That's another thing these games always do. They always use the, the European English way of spelling things. Or I guess, honestly, anything that's non-American, because Canada also uses that spelling to my knowledge, too, so... American English is not used in the modern Dragon Quest localizations, which is also, I think, something that adds it a little more flavor compared to traditional game translations. Though obviously, again, not everyone's cup of tea. But I like that there's variety like this. I think there are a handful of people though that are familiar with kind of the Middle English is I think the proper academic term for it. And they often look at games like this, and I think also Octopath Traveler kind of went for the same thing with some of its NPCs, and those people are always pulling their hair out, like, this is not how those people talked, you're just using the language wrong, which I understand that could probably be frustrating if you really know your shit, and you're like, yeah, this is just not how real people ever talked in history. But I can't speak for if Dragon Quest does it right or not, but I know definitely Octopath apparently really kind of flubbed that. And I know a lot of scholarly people who, or just people that were well-read on the subject, were not happy with it. So yeah, we are here in this cave, which as you can see, we had to use our torch so that we could see our way. This spot actually has no actual random encounters, so you can just freely go through. And what do you know? Grandpa Airdrick left us a nice little message here on a stone tablet. Who's taking care of these plants under here? Unless it's like a weird like sort of moss that grows in caves and shit. I'm actually very unfamiliar with cave fauna, or actually flora. I said the wrong one and there's only 2 of them. What the fuck am I doing? So yeah, this right here is letting us know what the main quest of the game is. We're gonna be looking for 3 Great Sages. And they have the items we need so that we can finally cross over to the island to the south and give the Dragon Lord a proper spanking and get our ball and go home. Literally a giant ball of radiating light that we need to get back to the king. I think in the old translations they called it a orb of light, but I think sphere of light sounds more... I don't know. I don't know. I think actually orb sounds more like fantasy. Sphere of light kind of sounds weird, now that I'm thinking about it. It just reminds me of that Drake and Josh, like, Okami game sphere joke, if those of you are my age remember that, but... Apologies to all the Zoomers and Boomers in my audience who have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. That is a very dated reference that reflects on my age and the god-awful shows I watched growing up.